Okay, guys, I think I'm live. Let me know in the comments, please. First time I've ever used this restream in case we have a guest on. You guys can hear me? Okay, good. You can hear me. There's a delay on this thing, but okay. The main thing is if you guys can hear me. So I'll just chat for a couple minutes and then we'll get into this. Yeah. Hi, guys. Um, why do you live in Russia if you're British? Well, I live here because I initially came here for work, and I don't know why there's a reverberation. Um, So yeah, I'm from England, but I moved to Russia for work, and Moscow's a great city. And I built a life here and stayed here. It's also why I have a good relationship with the Eastern Pullers and an understanding of their point of view on some of this, and at least be able to convey that to you guys, as well as obviously understanding the Western side of it, being English too. So I can say that I believe I sit in the middle. I have no investment in the game. I'm no longer invested in arm wrestling financially. As a lot of you know, I'm heavily into strongman. Uh, and I will talk about what I know about and what is my opinion. I'll be clear, it's only my opinion. But obviously, I have probably a unique insight as a former investor and king of the table and somebody who worked with pretty much all the parties involved now. So, привет, как тебе Москва? Москва очень красиво, очень хорошо, спасибо. But we'll do this interview or this stream in English. Let me just check because I can hear myself feedback on this. I don't know why. Is it clear audio for you guys? Just let me know. I can't change the mic, guys. It's just on mic and my computer. So look, just generally before I get into a this isn't a kind of new situation for me because in strongman we have a lot of similarities. The two sports have a lot of things that overlap. Some of you may know the star of strongman is Hafthor Bjornsson. He has like 4 or 5 million followers. He's the big star. He's in Games of Thrones. Thor doesn't compete at World's Strongest Man, the biggest tournament in strongman, the most famous one, due to a breakdown of relations. So, I say this is not unique. Some of you know that I am director of Strongman at Siberian Power Show, and I bought Thor and people like Mateus, JF Caron. So these are Iceland, Poland, Canada, Americans, and I pit them up against the Russian guys, 5 Russian guys. And it was also the first time that the Russian guys from 2 opposing federations all agreed to compete. So why did everyone come? Because I also in Strongman sit in a neutral position, and I'm kind of the guy that brings the East and the West together in that. So I've been just looking at this situation pan out in arm wrestling. It's very disappointing to see, and I've kind of sat back and hoped it would resolve itself. But in some ways, it seems to be getting worse because no one really seems to be clear on what's going on, and the Eastern European guys aren't speaking. Most of them don't speak English, of course. I did ask Aramis if he was interested in coming on here. He's not. So for now, it's just me. It's open if someone else wants to come on. Perhaps it would be handy if Devon Laratt came on. It's up to each of these people. So what I would say is what we're looking for is a way to solve this situation. Although I'm not working in arm wrestling anymore, I just have a vested interest in the sport continuing to grow where I left off. When I left King of the Table, it was in a pretty good spot, but there were some issues. But the main thing is it was growing, everyone was getting paid, and everyone was competing together. but a lot has happened since that point. So yeah, I'm sad to see this. There's a great fan base in arm wrestling. Everyone has strong opinions. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course, you guys are going to disagree over this situation, but I think we all want it to continue with all the best pullers in the world against one another. That's what the sport's about. That's the essence of sport. The best against the best. So just briefly, I can tell you on this kind of main match that's been talked about at the moment is Devon and Vitali. I think you all know I'm friends with both of them. I've known both for years. I've worked with both on many projects. I see Vitali more than Devon because we do all the same kind of sports shows and festivals here in Russia. Vitali is not scared to pull Devon. That's a fact. He's ready to pull him. He wants to pull him. Devon is not scared to pull Vitali. They both believe they're going to win. Both those guys want their match. There's a set of circumstances here that at the moment meant that the match is not going ahead, which is the detriment of them and the sport. That's truly what I believe, speaking to both of them. And when I've heard both of their kind of ideas, ways to resolve this privately, both seem to come up with ideas that mean their match would happen. So that's what I believe. I know a lot of people want to say one or the other is scared, depending on who you support, but I don't see the situation like that. I'm telling you truthfully, I don't think it is that way. So let's unpack this and try and figure out what's going on. And I want to start with what's the point of view of the Eastern guys, that because the Eastern guys aren't really coming on and talking about their side of things, it's difficult for anyone to understand, but they are talking privately. Of course, I've had conversations with the guys in Russia about this. So I want to give their point of view. And I think some of the points that they've got are fair and reasonable, but it's been lost somewhere through all of this. So I made a list of some of the things they've talked about. So a big one was about money not being paid from the last King of the Table event. Now, I can't tell you about that. By that time, I'd left King of the Table 2 or 3 events before that. And it's clear from what East versus West have said and what Core Sports have said that, yeah, there's an issue with athletes who haven't been fully paid. So, of course, that's a legitimate kind of complaint for Eastern and Western athletes. And it seems like it hasn't been conveyed to those guys exactly how those payments are going to be resolved. So, of course, they've got a legitimate questions there, and I'm not sure anybody's had an answer for them. Certainly, that's what they're telling me. So that's one issue. It just seems like that's going to have to be figured out because it's no good East versus West and Core Sports arguing about it. The athletes don't care who's responsible; they just want to get the money that they were told they'd be paid, and I think that's fair enough. So I think that was the basis of one of the first kind of arguments that came out, complaints about everything. Sorry, guys, talking about the audio. I don't know that I can hear it bouncing back, but I don't know how to fix that. Maybe that's better. Yeah? Is that better? I think maybe. So that about the money, about refereeing. A lot of the guys have complaints about the refereeing. Now, the fact is, the referees and the rules right up to now have all been appointed by Engin. So it's a moot point that there's something dodgy going on with that. That's an absolute fact. We all know it. He had control. He was in charge of that. This clearly is an issue with refereeing, as there was at my time at King of the Table, and I hated it. It was so frustrating. The referees are clearly coming into King of the Table and now East versus West with a completely different set of rules to what they're used to guiding matches under, and it's become a big problem for them. There has to be some sort of training and consistency with the referees, whether they turn up 2 days before the event, and you have to pay them, of course, to do that, but you go through rehearsals, dummy matches. Something has to be done like that. It would resolve a lot of the problems, I think, that these athletes have a problem with. Their other complaint they said to me was that all the referees are from the Western side of the world. Well, maybe that's a fair point. And maybe it's time that you could mix it up and have some refs from the West and some from the East. I think there's something reasonable for the organization to look at and something reasonable from the point of view of the athletes from both sides. I don't think anyone would argue against these things. And I think it's something that Robert, as far as I'm aware, I don't really know Robert and Dexter at all, but as far as I'm aware, and people that I trust said these are very positive people looking to do positive changes. So I'm sure they're open to these kind of things. About the visa, this match was moved to Brian Shaw's event in Colorado. I live in Russia. I know everything about visas. The 8 different international athletes that I just brought to Siberian Power Show, I did all their visas for them, including Americans, and I do it for Russian athletes going to America. It is a nightmare to get a visa. You do have to go to another country. However, these guys were sorting out a visa through connections for Vitali, where he would just go there and pick it up and go on to America. Okay, that does help Vitali, but from his point of view, that wasn't really conveyed to him very clearly exactly which country he'd have to go to. It was quite a last-minute change. So I see both sides of the argument there. Robert and Dexter were doing everything they can to get the visa for Vitali once they realized the event was going to be switched to America. And from Vitali's point of view, it was all a bit last minute, a few doubts. There was no one who speaks Russian in the organization who was clearly conveying that to him. So again, it's just a kind of lack of communication, a bit of misunderstanding. But about visas, it's possible for all these people to get visas if there's enough time. No one can say it's impossible. I've got so many visas. For Siberian Power Show, I want to say we did something like 150 visas for something like, I don't know what it was, 14 countries between bodybuilding, fitness bikini, and arm wrestling. So all these things are possible. It just takes a bit of effort and communication. Right. Another gripe that these Eastern athletes have asked me to bring up is they're worried now that all the competitions will take place in America. That's the idea now, to move it to there. I understand that they don't want all the competitions there, but they've also had it very easy where it's been just in Turkey. It's been on their doorstep, one flight, without visas. They've had it very good all their own way. So now if the show's on the road, I think they've got to suck that up. I understand that it probably isn't correct if all the events are now in America, but I don't think that is the case. I don't think East versus West have said anything about that. But that's a concern, again, that there hasn't been that communication between the athletes and the owners. And I'm not saying it's anyone's fault, but there's a breakdown of communication there. And because of that, that's a legitimate concern that they have, that will there be any more arm wrestling taking place in Europe? So these are just concerns, guys, that the guys in the East have relayed to me. And yeah, I think were and are legitimate reasons. And I think all of them are fair and all of them are solvable with communication. What initially happened is, as I know, a post appeared on Instagram talking about how some athletes hadn't been paid from one of the events, and everything seemed okay, that it's a problem, a real problem, but something that can be solved. But we went from rational problems to completely irrational problems, which was that Devon Laratt is doing this and that, and the rules are all going to be changed, and it's going to turn into a clown show, and it's only in America. These things factually have not happened. It became completely irrational at that point, and now it's become some kind of personal vendetta, and the guys in the East appear to have lost the initial problems they had, which were all the list I just went through, which were legitimate claims to things that they want to understand clearly. You have to remember, when there's a complete language barrier and a cultural barrier, without someone in the middle, you are going to have these problems. It's not easy. And it's a pretty strange situation, because actually the middleman for the Eastern athletes has been Engin Terzi, who doesn't even speak Russian. So basically probably, what's it like, Hermes, Sergey, Levon, maybe those few can speak to him, but pretty much all the guys actually just going through, translation apps and things anyway. So it's not even like it's a clear middleman for them. But Engin was a guy who would offer them a match. They would say yes or no. He would put that match on. He would offer them a set amount of money, and he would pay them that cash when the match was done. And that's why for them, it was very simple. It's not if they had a great relationship with him or not, but it was if he came up with a match and said that would be it and came up with the money, everything would be like that. They jump on a plane, like even the Russians, one flight to Turkey, a few hours, no visa. Of course, everyone's happy with that. Of course, everyone, happy days, isn't it? You know, they're easy money and everyone did what they said. But that was their only form of communication through this. So moving on, Devon Laratt, who's become a focal point from these legitimate claims to being what they now kind of seem to be targeting. And it's become personal. I've said it a million times, and I've said it, whether you vehemently hate Devon Laratt or if you really like him, it's completely irrelevant. He goes about ways he wants to in this sport. It's up to him. And if you love him or hate him, you pay your money to watch him get beat or you pay your money to watch him win. Great. It doesn't matter. You can have all these characters in sport. If you take it's levels, of course, arm wrestling is much smaller than boxing, MMA. Muhammad Ali was the big money maker, the most outspoken guy in boxing. Conor McGregor in UFC. Guess what? None of the opponents of Ali, after all the smack talk he did, none of them liked him. Joe Frazier, George Foreman, they hated him. In UFC, it was the same. They hated the guy. So guess what? Devon Laratt is never going to be a popular guy amongst the athletes in arm wrestling. Yes, they understand he brings the money in, but because of the way he goes about it, amongst the other athletes, it's common sense that he's not going to be flavor of the month when his tactics building up to a match and promoting it is to kind of, what can you say, talk negatively about his opponent. That's what he wants to do. But as a promoter, that's fine. You have characters like that. You understand this as a sport. People are allowed gamesmanship. They're allowed to do what they want. It's a completely different question of if it influences referees. If referees are being influenced by what Devon is doing during a match at the table, the onus is on them. They are the problem. As in every sport, an athlete who has got a brain will do everything they can to seek an advantage. So if Devon Laratt does that and he gets some kind of advantage, great. If the referee doesn't allow it, perfect if it's not within the rules. The onus is 100% on the referees. Of course it is. So the referees, which up until now Engen has assigned, and they can change it, why not? They can bring in some others, they can keep some of the ones they had, but the referees need a fair shot at understanding how to apply the rules. My time at King of the Table, Bill Phillips would always say to me, Matt, it's just not clear. I'm not sure how we're supposed to implement this. It's changing. I saw Ray did an interview where one of the referees went on yesterday. They talk very honestly. They're just not clear how to implement it. If they were 100% clear on the rules, it doesn't matter what Devon Laratt's saying up there. It does not matter. The referees need training. They need support. It's not anti-referee. They need help and support of the organization. But for this whole thing to turn into something personal against anyone, including some of the Eastern athletes that fans are now turning against, but against Devon, it's bullshit. Because guess what? Like I told you, if you like him, you don't like him. He's allowed to go around the sport the way he wants to do it. It does not affect the matches if they're refereed properly. You have to understand that. We all are clear now that Devon doesn't have a controlling stake. He doesn't have any type of ownership in this organization. Does he have a good relationship with the new owners? Yes, because he was someone that knew them before they even bought the organization. And he's a star moneymaker in the sport. When I was at King of the Table, when we were looking at putting a card on, I would always think about, how do we build this card around Devon Laratt? Why? Because he makes money. And if he makes money, all the athletes get a better share of that money. The sport grows, and then we have money to invest into the next tournament. So the guy is incredibly important for many reasons. You don't have to like him, but you have to understand the importance of why these people have got very confused about his position in the sport. every athlete is allowed to talk about if they want rule changes. There hasn't been any rule changes up until now. Again, there's this irrational idea that the rules are going to change and it's all going to be suited for Devon, but the rules haven't changed. But what the Eastern athletes are telling me is, again, they need a middleman that Robert and Dexter say, okay, we're thinking about these rule changes. What do you guys say? And it goes to a vote amongst all the athletes. I've spoken to Devon. He says he agrees. That's exactly how it should be. It should be common consensus on the rules. But he'll voice what rule changes he thinks. Maybe Larratt will have completely different idea. That's fine. If they agree on a middle ground, a rule can be changed. If they don't, the rules can stay as they are. Just because Devon's a loud voice in all of this, don't get confused that that means he's got some greater power over it all. He's just very loud publicly compared to these other guys. But this is where the confusion has been with the Eastern athletes. Because he's very vocal, they're assuming these changes would definitely go ahead, but they haven't. And I think all this kind of fuss that's gone on now will even more cement the fact that no individual will be able to have that kind of influence over the sport. So moving on, there's a big topic about Engin, and I can only tell you about my personal experiences at the time at King of the Table and things that I hear. One thing I hear about Engin is the quality of matchmaking. I believe there's a number of people in the sport that are capable of making very good matches, understanding how to do that. I think Neil Pickup would be a good example of that. Of all the people involved in arm wrestling in terms of stakeholders, I probably had the least knowledge of the sport, the polar opposite to strongman, where I would say I'm up there with kind of historian of the sport. Arm wrestling is completely different, so I could only ever look at it from a business point of view. So I understood the very high-end matches, the top 10 guys, but below that, there's no point ever asking me to put a match together. I admit there's people much better to do that than me. As you guys know, there was a part where Engin was totally out of my willingness, but I didn't have a controlling stake in King of the Table. There was a part where Engin was setting matches for King of the Table too, which for me was greatly disappointing. And I felt that a lot of the matchmaking was awful. We had a situation where Engin fell out with Ryan Bowen. Ryan Bowen versus Schoolboy for us would have been a great match, but we weren't allowed to have it because of his fallout. And yet what happened now? He rehired Ryan Bowen. So he got to gain out of it all, but we lost out of it all. So don't tell me it's something about love for the sport all the way with Engin, because it wasn't. It was his personal problems with people that caused problems in our organization. I hope you understand that. Then there was the Denis Simplenkov come back into the sport. The biggest news after kind of Levin and Devon, Dennis coming back was huge. If you guys remember, I went to Dennis's gym as part of the brokering of that deal about 6 months before he came back into arm wrestling. He had his first match against John Brezink. I was hesitant about that one. We all understood if we could build this up so that Denis Simplenkov had maybe 7-8 matches, and then he would finally face either Devon Laratt or Levin Seganashvili. It could be a great thing for the sport, a huge promotion growth. He comes into King of the Table. He goes up against John Brezink. And then what happens? He has one match, East versus West, against Devon Laratt. I knew he was going to lose that match. I knew he had no chance. I spoke to the guys at his gym. It was never, ever feasible. So is that good matchmaking to kill something that was going to be huge for promotion of the sport, the build-up of this guy progressing up through different athletes? Probably because of his health, he was never going to win those last 2 matches, but he could have been put into matches that he would have won all the way up to then. It was shocking matchmaking. Alexei Voivoda, same thing. He came in at an even lower level, and again, we were told to put him in against John, or that was the match that was put together. And he came in and lost, and as we know with Voivoda, he doesn't want to be in that situation. If he's not winning, he's not enjoying it, and he went straight out of the sport. So we effectively lost Simplenkov and Voivoda, probably the 2 biggest names in the sport after Devon and Levin. You can talk about Hermes and and Vitali, but those were huge names. It was completely counterproductive for the sport, and it was a money grab straight away that wasn't necessary at all. I could tell you that factually. Certainly that's my opinion, and that's how those matches were made. So it's not all as gravy as everyone says. There's one amazing matchmaker out there, and that's why he's necessary in the sport. I believe there's people like I say, like Neil. There'd be other people that I don't even know that have great knowledge on the sport and can put those matches together, guys below the top 10. The top 10 guys, even for me, it was pretty obvious how it should have been done, and it wasn't done. And there's been some serious miscalculations. That's why I had a pretty abrupt departure from the sport, because although everybody from the outside was saying this thing's getting bigger and bigger, look at the scale of this thing. For me, I could already see this thing was on a knife edge, because the sport had been saturated, East versus West, with too many matches, and the guys at the very top end, who were the guys that make the money and make all the promotion in the sport, going straight into big matches and losing them is a big mistake. For the business and the sport, you can't have 16 people. So you got 16 matches. You can't have 16 losses every couple months. It takes it away for the fans and everything. The build up to like Devon versus Levin 1 was huge because people really believed in it. But once all these guys are losing matches after matches in huge numbers, it's a huge problem for the sport. It can't keep growing because fans lose interest. You would never do that in boxing, have a guy come in off the back of 3 losses and a couple wins and then going for a big match, because everyone lose interest. You need to see the guys building up so they've got records of 17, 18 and 0, and then they fight Canelo. So my point is, I think the matchmaking had been pretty terrible, and I believe below the top 10 guys, there's other people capable of matchmaking just as well. I don't doubt for a second that Engin loves arm wrestling and that he's one of the most knowledgeable people about the sport. I don't doubt it for a second. But I know for a fact that the matches we weren't allowed to have at King of the Table, the athletes we weren't allowed to have because of his personal problems, were not for the good of the sport. So I'm just checking my notes here. I believe it's a ticking time bomb if they rehire Engin. I don't see how it will work. Even every Eastern athlete is saying, we all know Engin has an incredibly difficult character. This was all based on when he was the owner of the organization. So how are people going to work with him, for him? The team at Core Sports, myself, we all found it absolutely impossible. So in my belief, the solution for this is to bring in professional matchmakers, people with serious knowledge in the sport, and bring in a middleman, because that's what the Eastern athletes want. They want someone to bridge the gap between them and the West. They want to say yes or no to proposed rule changes. They want to be informed at the same time as the Western athletes on venues. They want support on how visas are processed, all these kinds of things. They want some say in referees. They want a mixture of Eastern and Western. They just want someone in the middle to put all this together for them. It's not so much, as I see it, that they're so reliant on Engin, and if Engin's not there, nothing happens. They just want to feel like they have a middleman who is the voice of reason for them, bearing in mind that nearly all of them are speaking no English. So, have you guys got some questions as I go through this? I'm just looking at any other notes that I had. So let me see. It's pointless, Matt. Either the Eastern pullers are brainwashed by Engin and don't care about facts, or they can't be bothered to get a translator to explain. I've explained their point of view, and some of them are legitimate. It's a shame that they've gone from legitimate points to just it being personal about an athlete they don't like in the sport. That's where I see the problem is. Finally, someone not sitting on the fence. I don't need to sit on the fence because I'm friends with both sides and I work from inside. I know the Eastern athletes like to tell the fans, look, guys, you only see a part of it. We're the athletes. Well, if they're able to say that, then they need to understand that I, as a major shareholder at one time in this, saw and know even more of the inside scoop than them. I understand from all the athletes' point of view. Engin offered them a lot of matches. He came good on those matches. He offered them money. He came good on the money. So I understand from their point of view, it's very, very simple. He offered them a match. It was easy to get to in Turkey, no visa, and he paid them. I understand their point of view. That's why for them, it was all very easy. And now it's up in the air because they don't have that middleman. My personal opinion, and it's only that, is that that's what Robert and Dexter should be doing, finding a middleman to bridge that gap. And I believe everyone could come together. So I actually believe that the Eastern athletes do want to continue with East versus West. They also want to pull the best guys. They just feel like they've lost any kind of voice in this. How can you form an employment contract with a man who is rumored to have literally put out hits on his athletes? Also, what is this constant rule change? WAF rules with 2 changes are set in stone. Again, about rules, as I said, I'm probably the least knowledgeable guy in arm wrestling who had kind of ownership in it. The rules were so frustrating for me, and I had sat down with Bill Collins. He'll confirm this and said, let's just iron this out. One rule set, stick to it. You'll write it out and we'll sign it off, and there'll be no more changes every tournament, and then we'll get some consistency and the rules applied better. And then for you guys arguing against the kind of Devon Laratt scenario, the referees are very clear in their head, and if Devon is playing games with the referee, if the referees are clear on the rules, he won't be able to manipulate it. It's much easier for him to manipulate rules, which is part of sport, it's gamesmanship, when the referees aren't clear on rules. That's what's happening so far. The referees have all admitted it themselves, but those referees and the rules were assigned by Engin. So it's not on Devon. You have to understand that. We need to support the referees. We, sport of arm wrestling, give them training, give them a couple days before events. Same when I did Siberian Power Show, I brought the referees in early. We went through the events. We had someone picking up the equipment. We went through what we would apply, a rule here or there for each one. I'm not sure that happens in arm wrestling. I didn't see that happen in my time. Guys, you can fire in some questions. Let me try and find it on this thing. Okay, profit over growth is never a great idea. Yeah, these people, Matt, you speak Russian, can't you, mediate? Yeah, I do. I've been speaking to Vitaly. I speak to these guys, and I understand their position, and that's why I've just put that across. But I haven't been asked by the organization to do any kind of mediation, so it's not for me to do that. If they approach me and ask me to help in some way, I would do so. But yeah, I haven't been asked. It's not my business to get involved unless asked to mediate. Profit over growth is never a great idea. If the sport is not profitable, and if you're not looking at profits, the business model will, in the end, collapse. It's not sustainable to run these competitions at times with big losses or even very small profits where there's no money to roll over into the next event. Perhaps I don't want to get into it because I don't think it's something to talk about publicly, but I think there was a difference between East versus West and King of the Table where it was our money. It was my money. 6 figures of money went into that. That was bankrolling the events for the sportsmen and for the next event. And also like Larry Wheels, of course, Adam, Engen had a slightly different situation. It's very different when it's not your own money that you're pitting through to this thing, but all that ends, doesn't it? And it ended for Engen. He sold it off. So yes, any business should be profitable. Why? Because then it's sustainable. Because then you can pay the athletes more. Because then you can improve what you're giving to the viewers. You can create better matches, better marketing, all these things. Profit does matter. It's not about making millions, but it's about making it viable for everyone. I've seen the Eastern European athletes saying, fine, they don't even make that much money if they're out of the top 10 in the sport. But the very same guys' main income revenue is like online coaching, arm wrestling, right? How do they do that? Because the sport increases in growth, they have more followers, and then they pick up more clients. You have to look outside of the box. It's a virtuous circle for everybody if the sport is profitable and the sport therefore keeps growing and is able to get bigger and bigger in bigger venues, sold to a wider audience. Even like we used to put ads on YouTube, I think it was on Google Pay and things like that to get more eyes on the sport. So yes, it is a business and profits are important. It's not so simple as someone's a hero by saturating the sport with ridiculous amounts of matches where ridiculous amounts of losses are happening all the time, but it soon starts burning out. And what we had is a situation where there was like a build up to, say, a Devon Laratt rematch, and you have like Vitali and Hermes, but actually below that, then the interest starts scaling off quite heavily in terms of pay-per-view sales and things like that, which means that fans are actually becoming less interested in those other matches. And that's why it has to be run as a business where everything is going upwards. It's not just, okay, we have this product here and we put it in front of everybody. It's not sustainable. It's not good for fans. It's not good for the sport. Okay, the sport doesn't generate enough money to fly people across the world every 6 weeks in business class. Yeah, I would agree. And let's not pretend it was all luxury before. I know some athletes perhaps have complained now. I think that, you know, they didn't get quite the same treatment. Probably King of the Table had the best treatment in terms of hotel and flights, I would say. But that's not necessarily a great business model as it stands now, the sport with just East versus West. Let's not pretend that in Turkey it was some kind of luxury, just a hotel, fairly standard. The guys on standard flights, the guys I know here from like Russia to there, it's no great scoop. I know the video comes on when the guys get to the airport and they're in a car, but standard hotels, standard food. So yeah, it's at this point, yeah, you can't fly everyone business class. You can't do everything. But I know there was a point, I don't even know if it's true, that Devon asked for some of his family members to be hosted there at the last event. If the start of any organization, the guy that actually has brought you a lot of that revenue for that event came to me and asked me at King of the Table, I would say yes, because he was responsible for some of that money that can pay for that. And any other athlete who is also responsible, I would do the same thing for. Why not? They're part of generating that money. That's fair. If a guy can't be bothered to promote it, that's his prerogative. But then don't expect me to spend money that he hasn't created for the business on extra seats on planes for his friends and family. It's just common sense. People have a problem with that if they don't like Devon, but it's nothing about Devon. It's just about where the revenues are coming from and how you can then fairly spend them. Let's be clear, Dennis isn't even top 25 level. I don't know exactly where he sits in the sport, but let's say Dennis sat at 20th. We didn't know when he came back to the sport. He beats John Brezing. Okay, it's a solid comeback. Matches could have been made where he would have beaten opponents and we'd have all started to believe it would have given excitement in the sport. It would have grown it in the East and the West, and it would have built up to a big match. But no, straight in against Devon, inevitable loss. And I heard the statement that Dennis did bigger pay-per-view numbers than Devon. Well, how ridiculous is that when he had one match at East versus West and it was against Devon? So how can you say that? Bro, tell us if Devon versus Vitali is going to happen or not. Guys, I don't work in the organization. They haven't asked me to get involved in this. Devon versus Vitali, I definitely believe will happen. We have a guest. How do I put you on here? Hello.
Hey, buddy.
How are you?
Good, good. I was just listening along.
Mm-hmm.
And, my name's on the thing, so I figured I'd just stop in and say hi.
And what's your thoughts, Devon? What you heard? Were you here at the beginning when I went through the list of what the Eastern guys have told me?
Yeah. Yeah, I heard everything. I'd love to. I still don't really understand, really, why they're quitting. I really don't get it. So to paraphrase what you said, Engen has told them he's quitting because of me, and therefore they're mad at me.
Yeah, I think from the way I see it, for both you and Engen, it's become very difficult to work together. But as
it's not difficult for me. It's not for me. It's not.
I know you said
I've been working with Engen for quite a while.
Yeah, I understand that this has been going on for quite a while and it's continued, but we all know that Engen, when he was in charge, it was very difficult for people to work for him. So when he's now an employee of the organization he sold to, and he's lost that control over all these things, I don't see how that's a sustainable model. And my thoughts from speaking to the Eastern athletes are they need a middleman. At the moment, the only guy being offered for that role is Engen. They haven't been given an alternative. And that's why the support still sits there.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I don't know. I don't know what's going on through their heads. I've tried to reach out to many of them personally. I don't understand. I really can't understand what the issue is. I just simply don't understand. All that I know is, the reason that I was so excited about King of the Table and East versus West is because I got to face the best athletes. And now they're quitting. And why is that? Why are they quitting? I personally don't understand it. My name is involved in this. I can't really understand why. But my frustration and my patience is honestly wearing very, very thin. I really, I'm just looking forward to competing. I'm an athlete. I want to compete at the highest level, and that's being roadblocked. This is being stopped.
Do you accept or see my viewpoint that in history of all sports, the guy who's at the top of it, the guy who's outspoken, I use the examples of Ali and McGregor, they're usually the least popular athlete amongst fellow athletes because of the fact that they're that outspoken. Whether you can talk about if it's jealousy about money, that's completely subjective. But just the fact that the way you go about promoting a match, the way you go about psyching yourself up, the way you go about getting into your opponent's head, it's going to upset them, right?
I mean, quite honestly, I'm able to separate my personal relations from the relations I have with athletes when I compete with them. From my end, from me personally, I'm quite fond of most of the athletes that I compete against. Most of the time when I've competed against you, I find that I'm closer to you. That's normal for me. I can't speak for them. I find a competition typically brings me closer to athletes. The only real problem I've had with an athlete, really, that I'm really aware of, is Dennis, and that has really nothing to do with the competition from my end. But anytime you're wanting to quit, not face somebody, it just stunts the sport. And that's really what's going on right now. The sport is being stunted. And,
Yeah.
you know, if I'm to blame because I'm too mean to people, you know, quite honestly, they can all go fuck themselves. And I'll just carry on, you know, like really, it just kind of upsets me that they're so weak. If this is, I know they're not all like this. And they're kind of being lumped together.
Yeah, that's a point that I haven't made. That from speaking to some of them are more under pressure to stick to the kind of strike that others are on, as opposed to all of them just being totally like, no, we'll bail out of this, which is also unfortunate. But there's pressure. I will say, as you know, I live in Russia and been married to Russian. There's a cultural difference, and where you can do all those things in the time of a match, and it's only for the match, and afterwards you can respect those guys and feel like you're happy to be friends with those guys. There is a cultural difference. Some of the guys in the East, they just don't get it at all. If you look at some of the all-time great athletes in Eastern sport, Fedor, Karelin, these guys never ever, it's all about Habib. It's about keep your mouth shut and prove what you can do. It's a very different thing, and not one is right and one is wrong. But I do believe culturally for those guys, they struggle to separate the two. I can see how the two are separated, but they can't. That's just a cultural difference. But it's irrelevant because you're not East versus West. You're an athlete the same as they are, competing at East versus West. And that's why they should have no issue about continuing to compete there. You're in the same boat as those. You're offered a match. You say yes or no. You're offered money. You say yes or no. And you go there and you arm wrestle, right?
Simple.
It's
simple. Has been simple, but now, you know, people are not coming to the party. Yeah. You know, but listen, it's not, I ultimately, there's one person that I think, I mean, why did athletes all quit? Because they wanted to? No, it's because they ain't gonna let it. Actually, listen, Matt, hey, love everybody. Unity, let's come together. I gotta go. I've got a very important call. Talk to you guys soon.
Good to see you. Bye-bye. Okay, so yeah, it was Devon. I mean, there's nothing much new there. I think he's tired of it. Some of the Eastern athletes I've spoken to, I think, are also pretty tired of this and would actually all prefer this thing got back together. And as I say, my opinion is they need a bridge between them and the new ownership. And I think that's fair and reasonable. They've got some questions that need to be answered, someone to take that to the new ownership. And I think that if that was done, everything would be okay. They need to think carefully who that person is, who the mediator is. If they get that right, I'm almost certain that the Eastern athletes are willing to get back into East versus West. So that for me is the solution. Bring in a mediator. The guys will all have a vote between the Eastern and Western and the ownership on the referees, on the rules. And if there's a majority for something, make a change. If there's not, it can stay as it is. To me, it seems fairly simple. Tons of guys also got injured because they pulled too many events. Yeah, it was just an absolute saturation. I didn't get it. And even hardcore fans, much more hardcore fans than like me, said like 5-6 hour events are a nightmare. It was just too much. People got real lives to get on with. I love sport. I'm addicted to sport. But after a few hours, it's enough, isn't it? Right. I'll try and just get into some of what you guys are saying here. If you've got questions, guys, throw them in. I don't know how far behind I am in all of this. I get overall, and the West guys are generally a higher percentage are pro Devon, and in the East, a higher percentage are pro Engin. Does Robert have any choice when Engin can use his WAF connections to get East versus West blacklisted if he doesn't get what he wants? again, that whole situation, my viewpoint at King of the Table was we're independent of everybody. Who cares? We had letters from these organizations and they went in the bin. And the athletes can choose to come and pull with us, and they did. I don't think we ever had someone turn us down at a high level. So I don't see where the issue is with any of that. Maybe I'm missing something, but that was my experience at King of the Table. Devon, I think I saw you. Dennis could have lost to someone else. Well, yes, he could have. But if someone's such a clever matchmaker, they could have made it 90% chance that he wouldn't have, while still having a reasonable match. Dennis was no slouch. He still beat John Brezink. So there's a lot of matches out there then that you can read his level of high-class guys that he could have matched up against in the build-up. And he probably himself would have gained confidence and more strength. Don't forget, we lost Larry Wheels. We lost Devon Simplenkov. We lost Vovoda. All through bad matchmaking. Those are huge losses to the sport of arm wrestling. I'm sorry for you guys it went for that way. So this guy says, I give Hermes and Camille credit for speaking up. Oh, this thing is moving so fast. Yeah, like I say, some of the points that the Eastern guys, I went through the whole list. If you missed at the beginning, are legitimate points. I have no issues with them. I think some of them were fair enough. There's a communication breakdown. Igor, perfect middleman. Jesus, this thing's moving so fast. I've never used this restream thing before. I only put it on in case someone wants to join. I offered Hermes, by the way. He didn't want to, respectfully said no. It's so difficult for these guys in a different language, and they found themselves in a difficult position, partly through their own fault, but they have got themselves a slightly difficult position. It's this thing about Devon has to quit hurting all the athletes, embarrassing people. He does embarrass people. It's not to everyone's taste, but that's life. You know, you go out on the street, and last night I went out to like a bar or club late. People behaving in different ways, some ways that you like and some ways you don't like. That's life. I can choose to be there. I can choose to say something, to not, but at the end of the day, if the sport is providing huge matches, the best against the best, it's paying for your tickets, paying for your flights, your hotels, it's giving you the matchups, it's giving you a salary for your family. You don't just walk away from that. You find a resolution. And if the problem is that your middleman, in this case, Engin, is decided to quit, fine. What's the solution? Get another middleman. Say, we want this spokesperson for us. Don't just quit. And that's what I've told the guys that I've spoken to. It seems obvious to me and fair. You've got fair and reasonable points. Tell Robert, we want this person to speak for us, mediate. Problem over. Brian Shaw's already created World's Strongest Arm, which could become the biggest arm wrestling competition in the world. Well, yeah, potentially, but I'm not sure that's necessarily what everybody wants, you know. We have arm wrestling to a lower level as well at Siberian Power Show, but I think East versus West concept is great in one organization. Right now, for arm wrestling, I would rather see it like that. If it all breaks up like that, I would probably fight for my slice of the cake at a Siberian Power Show. But I don't think that's actually the best thing for the sport, why there's still a chance that East versus West can reunite. I think that's the best solution for the sport. People need to start spamming sheep emoji Eastern strikers. Like I say, guys, the Eastern guys did have some legitimate and still do complaints or ideas that are questions that they need answered. Some of it's legitimate, but somehow it's just flipped into a kind of an anti-Devon Laratt rant, which is, it's just nothing. You don't have to like the guy. It's irrelevant. I understand why many of them don't. It's irrelevant. Devon humiliated a great young talent. I don't know who that was. Maybe he did. Whoever that was had the choice to face Devon. Whoever manages and advises that guy had the choice. If it was at King of the Table, if it was East versus West, us as promoters had the choice to put that match on. What, we're going to pretend we don't know how Devon's going to behave during a match, or that opponent or his management didn't know. They took the match. What did they expect to happen? Suck it up. If you don't want the big money match against Devon, don't take the match. You don't have to. You can take on other people at East versus West, at King of the Table. It's that simple. Yeah, it's not culture. Many of us Americans disagree as well. Yeah, of course. I understand. I'm from England. I'll give you an example of that. Devon versus Dave Chafee. I was there in person. I like both the guys. I found it a bit uncomfortable, some of that stuff. So, of course, I understand that. But overall, although I found it uncomfortable, that's what Devon does. I knew he was going to do it. You all knew he was going to do it. Dave knew he was going to do it when he took the match. Great. Pay your money to see Devon get beat, if that's your opinion on it. If you like it the other way, pay your money to see him win. If none of you guys pay to watch him, the promoters would stop putting on the matches. But of course you will. Most interesting guy in the sport. Okay, so something here. If they don't agree how Devon wants to do things, it's irrelevant, guys. Devon doesn't have any control over the rules or the owners. He's just very vocal in what he thinks the changes should be, but none of those changes have happened. He said he'd been talking with Engin for months and months, and how Engin wanted to quit, etc. As far as I know, that was kind of common knowledge, wasn't it? Yeah, that's the thing. It's very difficult, guys, for anybody to sell a business and then carry on working there when you've had full control. I don't think I could do it. Genuinely don't think I could do it. And if I couldn't do it, Jesus Christ, how could Engin do it? European athletes had a European promoter for 18 events. Now it's a US owner, and suddenly it's not fair. Yeah, there's a kind of bit of that. And like I say, even their European promoter didn't speak their language. So that's how simple this is. It's not they had someone that's like an amazing friendship with them all, someone they can't even communicate with face to face. It's just someone very simply says, this is your match, this is the location, this is the money. If they have it simple like that, the Europeans would be okay. They don't actually ask too much. They go about their work pretty simply. Baku is meaningless. It's going to be a war zone soon. I'm pretty sure that East versus West announced that at this stage, Baku is not going ahead. Seems bizarre to me that the host or promoter there is making videos and tagging athletes. That's not the way we go about business. Even if he's 100% right, some things have got to be behind closed doors, haven't they? Devon has never run from a challenge. Devon is ready to face Vitali. Vitali is ready to face Devon. I 100% believe both are ready from conversations I've had with both and ideas I've had how the matches could take place. 100% believe they both want to face each other. What do you think is the biggest step forward East vs West can make starting this week? To bring in, I've said this a million times, I think, on this stream, someone as a voice for the Eastern athletes to go to and take that opinion and present it to Robert and Dexter. A middleman. They don't want that work. They don't want the communication and the miscommunication. They want to tell someone they trust. They want that person to go away and do it. I buy every pay-per-view, but Engen never listens when we say stop booking so many matches. I mean, that's what's ridiculous. You guys, as hardcore fans, didn't want so many matches, which was saturating the sport and slowly pushing it down. The numbers, pay-per-view numbers, you can say we had some bigger ones towards the end. That's because there were still a few huge matches out there, like the Devon Levin rematch, like Dennis versus Levon, Hermes Vitali. But those matches are pretty much done now, aren't they? There's a few more there, but this is the thing. So the numbers don't tell the whole story, because what you're doing is saturating the good matches before they're before time. Baku was never booked. That's as I understand. It was, the idea was floated to the athletes and everyone. So then when Engen announced it, everyone thought it's on. But at that period of time, a lot of athletes and fans weren't aware that Engen had already sold East versus West to Robert. That's where the confusion was there. Funny how Brezink there was never problems. He's loved by everybody. Yeah, and he's a likable character, isn't he? How can anyone not like him? He's been in the sport for years and just a very likable guy. It's completely something different to Devon, of course. Devon's the opposite. He's Marmite. You like him or you hate him. But it's irrelevant. You can't have everyone the same characters. When will you meet Smaev again? I'm doing some management for Smaev now. We're trying to get sponsors for him. And next year I may put Smaev in an arm wrestling match. So let's hope East versus West sorts itself out, and I'll put him in East versus West. So there's some motivation for you guys to, as fans, also to get behind both sides and get this back together. What do you think of the Dennis match? I said I knew he was going to lose, even as someone who didn't really understand the sport. I thought it was a massive, massive missed opportunity to grow the sport and give people some belief that he could actually compete against Devon and Levon. Look, I mean, there's a lot of stuff here about Engen, and I had some pretty strong things to say. I say it once again, the guy's super knowledgeable about the sport. He put in a lot of work at East versus West, but it wasn't all for the good of the sport, and some of it was at the severe detriment of King of the Table. So let's have some balance on the whole thing. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. Can I put this up like that? There you go, I can. Okay, I've learned something new. Okay, Matt, arm wrestling would have been far healthier had you and the team still run things. Nothing against Bacta, more against that angry little man. It's irrelevant about Robert. This is a new thing, as far as I know. He's doing good and he's a popular guy. I believe even all the Eastern athletes like him too. I don't think there's any issues with him whatsoever. As I said, it wasn't quite as healthy as it perhaps seemed on the outside when I was there, because I didn't have a controlling state. I found my whole time there incredibly frustrating. Yeah. Okay, so I can click on these and you guys can see them on the screen. When he saw the Shore Classic is going to happen, it's be the biggest arm wrestling event ever, he started this BS. Look, Shore Classic's great. For me now, it's the #1 comp in strongman, not in size, but in level competition. But it's not the biggest arm wrestling event ever. Some of the King of the Tables and East versus West were bigger. It was just a chance to host one East versus West event, which I think was a great idea. Was there a breakdown in communication about that with the Eastern European athletes? Yes, I think there was, because I think Engen was the guy communicating that, but he quit just before and it all got lost then. That's how I believe that went down, and why there's understandable confusion from the Eastern athletes as well. With the animosity between Engin and Devon having escalated so much, will this not create a negative bias towards Devon if Engin would be back on the helm of things at East versus West? Look, Devon was just on here and said he's happy to carry on at East versus West if Engin is there. I don't know if that's Engin's opinion or not, but in my opinion, it'd be incredibly difficult to have a former owner with someone with kind of controlling interests at that organization. I would go down another route, which is find a different middleman. When will I meet him again? Probably quite soon, because like I say, I am handling some of his business affairs now. He's now concentrating on bodybuilding, but we've talked about arm wrestling, and like I say, let's get this sorted out, and I'll try and bring him to an East versus West event, because we want East versus West to succeed, because we want arm wrestling united. We should be thinking about solutions at this point. Yeah, it's probably a fair point. That's what I say. The Eastern guys had it very, very easily in Turkey in recent times, which is part of the reason now they've gone this way. They can't have it all their own way, but at the same time, it is fair that they find out about locations and visas and things privately and before fans. That's a legitimate claim that they have, which is fair. The Eastern European guys have a lot of fair points. It's just somehow they've gone from rational points to many of them just pitting personal attacks on Devon, which is completely counterproductive. And if you have a problem with an organization, you don't all just quit and damage the sport you're in. You immediately tell the owners what they need to do to fix things, and you do that privately. It's no good doing all this online. If I may ask, percentage-wise, how much of the pay-per-view sales seem to be due to Devon featuring on a card compared to ones where he didn't? Hugely. I think it's pretty obvious for everybody. Levon's a big pool, but that was when he had matches against those few top guys, but now he's had those matches and absolutely thrashed Devon and Hermes. Now it's difficult to have that interest. I see fans say, like, kind of losing interest because he's so dominant. Levon is so impressive. He's an incredible athlete, and I always got on well with him. I think he's a good guy, but he's so dominant that that's now a problem. Devon is a massive, massive percentage of sales. It's incredibly important for the sport. He's the equivalent of McGregor in UFC. Of course, we're on a much smaller scale, but he's the equivalent of that. It's fine if you hate him, you want to watch him lose. Fine, it doesn't matter. Devon is always respectful after the match. Yeah, I think that's the case. And when he was on here, that's what I said. That's one thing. He can separate the two things. Some of the Eastern guys really do have problems separating that, as do some Westerners who just don't like it. And I understand that. But a higher percentage of the Eastern guys just cannot seem to separate his antics when it's a match and when it's not. I can't talk about anyone's salary, just like your employers wouldn't be allowed to go on YouTube and start saying how much they paid you. But the athletes, top athletes, get paid well. And if someone's generating that money for the business, such as Devon, he'll get a healthy slice of that, deservedly so. So if he's getting money and he asks the promoter, can I bring in 2 family members? Why would that promoter say no? And guys, thanks for these super chats. I hope I'm not missing them. So sorry if I am. If I am, I'll write to you afterwards or message me and say I missed it. John, well said, sir. As a fan, I agree with all the points you're making. With all the drama and chaos going on, you've had one of the more logical, rational, and factual takes on the subjects. Thank you. I'm glad you think so. Of course, people are going to say I'm biased one way or the other, but I'm not. I'm good friends with the Russian guys, Easterners. I live in Russia, but I'm also English. I'm friendly with Westerners, including Devon. I don't know the new ownership. I've never met Robert or Dexter, so I don't feel like I have any bias here. I've made it clear I had working problems with Engin, and there's no secret. Every single person, I think, has said that publicly, even athletes. It's a very difficult person to work with. I've explained why I thought some of the matchmaking was piss poor once it got into the top 10 guys. That's my opinion, and I think the business model showed that. Bring Denison Plankoff to King of the Table again. Pay-per-view going to increase. I'm not at King of the Table. It's not my business. Yeah, I hope he continues to pull East versus West, and I hope there's better matchmaking for him. Anyone with just a little understanding of business would know that Engin in management position is not going to work. If this thing is going mainstream, he's too unprofessional. I think it's incredibly difficult. It takes a special type of character that would work. They can get a translator. There's different languages being spoken: Georgian, Russian, Ukrainian, Italian, different languages. It's not so much about the language. Engin didn't speak their language, but it was just someone they felt they could go through and get simple clarity, and that's what's been lost. It's not a very difficult job as long as it's someone they trust, someone they feel is independent, and someone they feel is not scared to sit down with Engin, with Robert and Dexter. Since when is not liking a particular arm wrestler enough reason to boycott East vs West or arm wrestle? This is a battle sport. Has people become so sensitive and weak, afraid of Devon talking shit? Yeah, I agree with that point. This is not the way to go about it. They can all hate him, fine, if that's, and it's kind of come out that a number of them do. Not all of them, by the way. I've spoken to like Vitaly, for etc. There's no kind of hatred there or anything like that whatsoever. So we can't get too general. Only the guys that have factually said something you can say that about. But yeah, this is not the way to go about it for the sport they love. A lot of them have made the statement that they would do this sport for no money. Well, great. Maybe it's true. But if that's the case, let's make sure that we're not destroying a sport that the best get to pool against the best. So if their issue is they haven't got a middleman, just ask for that. I agree the matchmaking was shit. On the face of it, it might have looked great. Great. Straight away, we've got Denison Plankov against Devon Laratt. Maybe that looked great. But when you think about that, when he was nothing like ready, it was inevitable he was going to lose. I heard out of his gym that there was no way. What was the point in the match? It just killed all the build-up, all the excitement, all the what-if, which is a big part of sport for all of us. And I told you about the Bowen thing. How dare someone not let us have an athlete compete because they had a personal problem with him, only for him to go on and bring that athlete back into his organization when it suited him? Is that for the good of the sport? Is it true the top Eastern athletes are paid by their respective governments for representing them in the sport? If so, why are they complaining about money? I can speak for Russia factually and say no, definitely not. Those guys definitely are not paid by government. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe perhaps Levon may have got funding, sponsorship, bonuses in Georgia, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But I know there's a lot of that being said, but I don't want to be quoted on that. I'm not certain, but I can say 100% in Russia, definitely not. Matt, would you sue Engin? If you're in Robert's position, leaving friendship behind and solely looking at it business-wise, no, I wouldn't. Look, even if I don't like someone or something like that, I'm not in the game of suing them where really no events have taken place during this time. It's just been a bit of a scandal. I would simply shake hands and move on, find what the solution is that the Eastern athletes need, which for the millionth time is a middleman, and move on like that. Let the guy be. He had his time. He chose to sell. Let him sail off into the sunset. If you have doubts, questions as an athlete, why not go through the owners instead of needing a middleman? It's what they've been used to up until this point. It's a cultural and language barrier, the way things are done. There is definitely, I can speak in Russia, there is a lot more based on type of friendship. You can't go for a business meeting here without sitting down, having a few drinks together first. It's just the way it's done. It's not necessarily right or wrong, but it's the way it's done. It's not a problem. I understand that's the way they like to do it. That's why I can conduct strongman and bring in guys from 8 different countries, as well as both opposing federations in Russia, the Russian athletes. It's just what people need. Everyone's a human being. There's a business element. Business includes knowing how to communicate with people. If that's what they need, that's what they need. If you think it's childish, if you don't, fine, but that's what they need. Find a way to give them what they need so it works for everybody. A lot of things here that perhaps not helpful. Guys, just bear in mind, as fans, although you have strong opinions and it's fair, it is pretty obvious that we should all just want this thing to get back together in some kind of harmony. Sorry, so you say here, I miss your super chat. I was saying this boycott will send a bad image to future sponsors of the sport. Potentially, yes. Yeah, you can't say there's something good about this at this moment in time. I saw something about Netflix or something that I had no idea about this, but yeah, there's something like this is can't be positive right now. That's why the sooner it's fixed, the better. Just get the Eastern athletes back, and I believe they want to. Communication. As far as I know, there's not someone communicating with them as a group now, or even as individuals clearly. This is 100% the way we're going to move forward. But yeah, all these things don't help for sponsorships. I agree, of course. How can it? But by the way, when you make a sponsorship package, do you know what you put in there? You put in there the numbers, and you put in there Devon Laratt. It's just facts, guys. That's why he's important. That's why all his antics work for sponsors, just like Conor did for UFC. Yeah, I hope it goes well for them. I mean, you have to remember it's part of a wider sport festival, but of course, I hope it goes well, and I hope they can learn things from it at East versus West. Kalina versus Matt rematch, left hand. They share story. Yeah, that'd be a good match one, I guess. You guys know better than me. The matchmakers will know better than me, but yeah, I think they've been having some back and forward, on social media. So that's one thing about all of this, with all of this beef, probably make some of the future matches a bit more spicy, wouldn't it? So perhaps there's a plus in there. Maybe a moderator so I can clean the chat up. How the hell do I do that? I have no idea. There's no mods in here. I don't know how I do it. I just downloaded this restream thing today, so anyone could jump on, but I'm sorry, I just don't know how you do it. How do you think Smaev would have done in the Siberian Power Show? Have you considered taking him along? Has he considered himself? I don't know if you're talking about strongman or arm wrestling. In strongman, he's not ready for it. He's bodybuilding. Right now, he hasn't got a great interest in it. He's got more interest in transferring into arm wrestling at the moment. How he would do, I don't know. It's like everything. Arm wrestling is so technical at that very top level. it takes a couple years, doesn't it? But the guy, I don't know if you guys saw, they measured his hands, his wrists. They're bigger than Levon's, his fist size, his wrist size. He's a true freak of nature, and he's only 26 years old. So I have no doubts that he could be an incredible arm wrestler with proper training. I think he could do very well in strongman too, but it's more likely he's going to transition into arm wrestling. So let's get East versus West back together, and I'll try and help East versus West by getting him to a match there. I left King of the Table, I think it was maybe after King of the Table 9, around that time. At that time, East versus West and Core Sports had contracts with athletes, but I was a shareholder in King of the Table, which was a massive issue for me. Do you speak Russian? Yes, I do. Not great, but I get by. Enough to communicate with the guys and all that type of thing. I don't really know. I don't know what the situation is. It was East versus West and King of the Table, and they were doing 1-on-1. So I guess it basically exists if they do a competition under the banner name King of the Table, but that situation is pretty tricky. And again, perhaps more clarity for the fans and for the athletes would be good on that. Hey, why not Matt Rhodes or Ray acts as middleman to these Russian-speaking athletes? It's down to the new owners to go down that route if they think that's the way to do it. That's my belief. It's the way to do it. Somehow I found myself in all of this talking to the Eastern athletes, and today at the beginning of this, I, for them, put all of their valid points forward because I didn't see someone else doing it. But I'm not going to start calling people and saying, can I be the middleman? I have plenty of my own work and endeavors. It's on their onus to contact who they want to do that. I wish the athletes themselves from the East would contact the owners and say who they want and how they want it done, but I haven't seen them do it. Eastern guys really hating on Devon is only going to bring more attention to the sport. So will the drama, I believe. Yeah, that's why it's not necessarily all lost now as long as it gets back together. But of course, if they boycotted it for good, then it would be a disaster. But all this kind of rivalry now just increases the kind of excitement, I would say, overall, as long as it all gets back together. What would it take for you to be willing for work East versus West? It would take them asking me to, them agreeing to what I asked them to pay me, and then them sticking to their word, and the guys from the East sticking to their word of what both sides communicate to me. I think if you know anything about me, I'm not taking any nonsense, any shit. Everything is straight down the line. It will take those three things, but this is way off right now. Is it a good thing to have someone like me who's not knowledgeable about arm wrestling, but is knowledgeable about the two sides? Or is it better to have someone that's knows all about arm wrestling, but perhaps is more emotionally involved in decisions, whereas I'm not? So you can have either or both. Whoever that is. There's plenty of people in the world. It's not just about me. Ingenso's company quit, and after East vs West starts publicly shitting on an organization, well, there's problems there, yeah. Yeah, people were asking that before. Yes, I do. Far from fluently, but I get by every day in Russian. I actually speak more Russian than English day to day. Why was England given any authority over King of the Table? Well, a big question I had. Unfortunately, as I said, contracts were between East versus West and Core Sports, not King of the Table. And there was a number of owners at one point, and perhaps it was in good faith at the beginning that Core Sports would also help East versus West, but then there were certain things said about how perhaps we could get priced out of it and things like that. There's a lot of things that weren't for the good of the sport. Like I say, the athletes can fairly and reasonably say they know more about the situations than the fans, but I can reasonably and fairly say I know more about the situation than the fans and the athletes. Okay, so here's a good question. I'm curious, now that admittedly you're out of the sport, what can anyone expect from your input? Of course, everyone has an opinion, but as far as resolution, I'm just giving my opinion, and I went through a list of what the legitimate claims are from the Eastern athletes at the beginning. So I hope people who actually have power in the sport will listen to those and perhaps find a way to fix those legitimate claims, because to me it seems like everybody's been concentrating on all the shit talk and problems athletes have amongst each other. And let's just get back to the original issues, which were about how decisions are made on when rules are changed, from what athletes referees are from how referees are trained, and just general communication with Eastern athletes, those things. I think the best thing to do would be a lot of people to stay quiet. But what's not constructive is if they don't give clear instructions to the new ownership of what would appease the issues that they have, which is why I've tried to be a voice for that at the beginning. All the trash talking that Devon does before and after and during the fight, it's all for clicks. That's how you get hype. That's how you get paid at the end. He's finally with all of them behind closed doors. Yeah, that's the way I see it. That's how I see it. I understand how people just can't get past the fact that it can be unsavory, but I see it exactly how you said it there. So Robert needs to drink vodka with the Eastern athletes. No, he needs to use someone to bridge that can relate to them, or they feel they can relate to. Because trust me, when the English-speaking world makes up a huge percentage of this world in terms of these types of sports and mass media and mainstream, and there is a difference between these people. You can twist it like that people need to drink vodka, but it's business is also on a human level. It's relationships is very important. Pay-per-view stream is enough to scare away sponsors. Yeah, from my day in the sport up until now, they've got to get a better grip, haven't they, on streaming? It was never good enough when I was there. Never good enough. And I know the last event, also the streaming went wrong. I agree. I hope they sort it out, and I would have thought someone like Robert, someone that probably has a chance to do so. It's very early days for him. I don't understand why it's on East versus West to get the athletes representation. If they can't speak the language, they need to get a manager that does that and speak for them, but it's not in East versus West to do this. You've got to remember some of the guys below, let's say like the top 10, very loosely saying that, aren't necessarily on any type of contract, don't have management, don't necessarily get paid that much money. So I'm talking more really for the top guys that are currently on strike. Let's say talking like Hermes, Vitali right now is not taking the match, or there's problems with it. These top guys, it makes business sense to have someone that just keeps things clear between them all. It makes sense. Devon brings a certain amount of showmanship to the sport by coming at his opponent from every vector. Love him or hate him, he sells a lot of pay-per-view. Yeah, it's just a fact. It's an absolute fact. I totally agree with you. Yep, I think that's a fair point. Can you join Ray? Is Ray here? If he's here and wants to join, he can. That's someone who speaks better Russian than me. If Engen is involved from here on, my what it closes, that's your prerogative, isn't it? I've got to say, even if East vs West are planning to continue with Engen, I'm sure it's with good intentions in terms of keeping the sport together. So by not supporting East vs West, I'm not sure that's productive if you enjoy the sport and you want to see it. How are these numbers? Are they close for a cost of an East versus West, especially the first five? Whatever issues I have, it's not for me to speak about East versus West numbers and anything I do know. That's not respectful. Whatever issues I have, even with Engen, it's not respectful. That's his business and not for me to talk about. The only thing I'll say, because he said it publicly, is Dennis sold more than Devon. He only pulled East versus West once, right, against Devon. I think that makes sense. European pillars are pulling out because they don't like Devon. They're unable to separate their personal issues with another athlete. It's cowardly mentality, weak mentality. That side of it, I 100% agree they're wrong on. But the points that I've picked through about some breakdown in communication with them, they have some valid points. And I think if those points were fixed, they would look past these issues with Devon that have come to the forefront, which I don't actually think would be a stop in the road. I think they would come back whether they like Devon or not. I think it's not actually the main problem that people seem to think it is, which was kind of my main point of coming on here today. I think Smaev is pretty open about his course that he's on. I think he's all in. Can you talk to Vitaly at all and help him to come to the US for Shore Classic? I've spoken to him. Vitaly's not up for quitting East versus West and bailing out. He feels in a bit of a difficult situation at the moment, but it's very last minute for him to get to Shore Classic. But if I can help in any way, I will. But it's not for me to get involved in these discussions unless East versus West asked me to. But have I spoken to Vitaly? Yes. Have I said my opinion is that he should try and face Devon? Yes. I don't want to get into this question too much, but there was a point once Core Sports had helped East versus West begin growing that there were suggestions from that side that things might happen that would be detrimental to King of the Table unless he was getting say over then the matches that were being made. What do you think? The reason I'm not talking about this is because I still have ongoing case against or with certain people that I was involved with at that time. And I want to give those people a fair chance to continue to do the right thing. Matt, what do you think about simplifying the rules? Is it possible? Would help a lot of issues and also make it more viewer friendly. You guys know a lot more about the rules than me. Probably 90% of you on this stream know more about arm wrestling rules than I do. I just believe whatever the rules are, as long as there's a common consensus amongst the athletes that they're happy with those rules, which right now they are, without any big changes, that the problem right now is the referees aren't clear on those rules. They haven't had enough practice and time on those rules. They're getting confused. Fly them in a couple days early, do dummy matches, go through every scenario that could be. I think that's the way to do it. Support the referees more, give them more chance. Based in athletes, you mean Russians? Well, I obviously am more based in Russia, but I speak to Larratt, who of course is Georgian. Spoken to Sergey once about this, who's Ukrainian. So Eastern athletes, I think everyone is clear which right now where the two sides are and who's in those groups. Of course, I don't speak to them all, but I've spoken to, I would say, let's say, in terms of business and notoriety, like Hermes, Sergey, Vitaly, like these guys. I've spoken to all of those in the last couple of weeks, but only to hear what their issue is, not to do anything else, because I haven't been asked to mediate by the ownership. No, I've made it pretty clear that I definitely wouldn't. I would find someone to take over that role. I would find matchmaker. I don't know who the best matchmaker could be. I imagine someone like Neil Pickup with extreme knowledge and of arm wrestling over so many years could be someone good, but I'm sure there's other people that perhaps you guys know better than me. But I would bring someone else in for matchmaking. I would support the referees with more training. Once again, I bring in a middleman to communicate. Those three things. I have no idea how to make a poll on this thing. I know I can separately on my YouTube. Of course, someone like that would make sense, who's in the middle of it all in terms of languages, speaks both, understands both sides. You're always going to have a problem. People will say that he's so invested in the sport that he won't be neutral, but probably he would be. Definitely a good option. One good option that I can see. Put me and Ray there. We'll fix it all for you guys. When has Devon attacked another athlete's family? I can't recall. You do realize, does this sell the fight? It makes it exciting. Some people are just too sensitive. I think we've gone over a lot. Devon is who he is. Like I said, this is extreme cases of much more popular people in sports, but Muhammad Ali and Conor McGregor, they said a hell of a lot of things that are going to upset and rile opponents, and it doesn't matter though. At the end of the day, just don't like them if you don't like them for that. But it's irrelevant to this side of things. He's not allowed to change the rules. Doesn't get a say in all of that. He's just a loud voice, so people think that that's what's going to happen. But it's just a loud voice. But the rules haven't changed. He didn't pick the referees. It's not complicated. It's really not complicated. It's just going to be like one small rule change at a time. It's just going to be, how do we get that visa? Where's the event going to be? Make sure all the athletes know before the public know. It can be anyone. It's simple, really. With Leonidas, with Larry, with Vovoda, with Dennis, huge mistakes were made in matchmaking, weren't they? at the real business end, at the serious end, at the end that brings in more fans, at the end that brings in more money. Chronic mistakes were made with matchmaking, and it killed me. That's why I say I thought the sport was on a knife edge a long time ago, and everyone thought it was ready to crack mainstream. You could see the cracks. What the hell is that about? I don't know what conversation is going on here. But I don't think that would be the way to solve anything with these guys. I hope not. Okay. Realistically speaking, which geographical location would be the best middle ground for East versus and West athletes? Dubai. Is there an ideal one? Look, when my time at King of the Table was in Dubai, there was lots of plus sides about that, about athletes not needing visas. Pretty much all athletes enjoyed going there. Very beautiful venue. I came in, by the way, for King of the Table 3. So I came in for the Devon versus Levon match, which required big funding and things like that. And that's when it went from being in a gym to the space, that luxury venue with the supercars and things. So I felt Dubai was a great location, but I hated the lack of atmosphere there. I hated it. I think you need fans live there. Same thing with the hotel in Turkey. That's one huge plus side for me. I think about America is the fans. Same if you had a competition here in Russia, you'd have a huge amount of live fans in the audience. So I think it should be on the road. I don't think it should be fixed anywhere. And that's why I believe the Shore Classic is a good example of somewhere that it could be. I think it's fair to have some in the East and where there's a big spectators, and the same in the West. I think that's fair. I think that's one of the gripes with the Eastern athletes. They're worried it will all be in the West. They can't say too much about that because they've had it all their own way so far, just in Turkey. But in balance, in the East and the West would be great. It's said that Russia is a good place to find a wife. Would you agree with that? I would agree with that. There's good women everywhere. Let's be honest. But it's very beautiful women here. It's a plus. But you can't just have guys going to East for every event because they don't want to get visas. Yeah, look, some of the guys in the West need to get visas to come into the East and vice versa. By the way, that event in Baku, there's some countries in the East that would have required visas. Ray is here. Ray is from Latvia. I'm pretty sure Ray would need a visa to go there. So it's not even like that was a straightforward venue for guys from the East. But all this thing about visas, all these guys can get visas for America. Let's not pretend it's some other way. I know for facts I've got Russian athletes visas for America, but the climate is difficult now. And vice versa, but it's all possible. But it's not easy. But at the end of the day, if they have enough notice, it's clear where they've got to go to get these visas, then it can be done. I think there was a legitimate case for saying there was a breakdown in communication of how they would get visas and the timing of that for the Shore Classic event, which I don't think was anyone's fault, by the way. I think it was just a set of circumstances led to that. Why doesn't Robert hire you? He could if he wanted, but he's probably not even thinking about it. I've never met Robert. I've never met him. If he approached me, I would consider it, but there's lots of people he could talk to. Robert and East West athletes get there and hug each other. I think it's time for positive changes. Don't be scared for that. If I was Robert, that would be my advice. But from all accounts, he's a very savvy businessman, and I trust him to get things right. Travis was a big shit talker and nobody complained. Eastern guys have to understand that it's entertainment, not WAF, and personality matters. Yeah, Travis was the first kind of big one for doing that, wasn't he? And always being forgiven now, and I think he's a very popular commentator. There's no problem having these personalities in the sport. Ray wouldn't get Matt on his call yesterday, the day before. Now Matt won't join. Matt's call, something. Come on, Ray. No, Ray didn't refuse me to go on his call. Yesterday I was out drinking. I was at a bar. I didn't see Ray's the day before. I commented on it and then carried on with my work. He didn't stop me going on there. I'm sure, I know if I had asked to go on there, he would have let me. If he wants to come on here, tell me and I'll try and work that out. But Devon found his way on, so all are welcome. I don't know how I make you guys mods on this thing. How do I do that? I can put you on timeout. I can block you, but I don't see how to make you a mod. Okay, how far behind am I on all this? I already stopped buying. Yeah, that's a real shame. It's one thing that definitely needs sorting out, isn't it? It's legitimate gripe from the fans, very legitimate. Do you think try and get involved in Arnold Classic? I don't know. These are big sport festivals. If they can put one event on once a year, because it's just once a year there, why not? I don't see any downside to that. Don't see any downside to them moving about in Europe sport festivals and in America. It all seems like a plus to me. Why not? The polls definitely in the West do. Right now, if you did those polls in some of these Eastern countries, you would probably see a majority for him, but they don't have the whole picture. I've never seen you on any podcast or any live, Matt. I think I've only ever done 1 or 2 lives ever on YouTube, but you're really well-spoken, level-headed, instant fan here. I appreciate that. Glad someone thinks so. I'm sure there's plenty of people think to the contrary. System up the reason kind of broke. It's terrible decisions by people with controlling stakes. A lot of things weren't done, in my opinion, for the good of the sport. And if it was for the good of the sport, it would have been actually for the good of the business. It was like a virtuous circle. It should have been. Guys, I'm nothing to do with East versus West. I can't unban you from something there. I'm nothing to do with any of it. I just have knowledge from being a former investor in the sport. Yeah, pretty sure that's done and dusted with. They brought in good money for a few events and quickly gone again. I don't know, maybe some money was washed there, but anyway, it's done and dusted. A few guys made some nice money at the time, but I don't think it's still around. Why do we care about PED use in sport? Everyone should be fine with it, not like it's some secret. This is an untested sport. This sport and arm wrestling that I'm heavily involved in are untested sports. There's a lot of confusion, misunderstanding about it, but it is what it is. Yeah. Hot take, Hengen built this entire league so he can destroy it if he wishes to. He built East versus West, but I'm not sure that technically is the league, because King of the Table came first, and I would say Larry and Adam created this thing right from the offset. Like I say, I came in after the second one. Yeah. And like I say, what appeared to be building the league at the beginning or from the outside was things that were negatively affecting it and why it was on a knife edge on the inside. You're talking about that poll that Devon made, and for some of you, you'd have found that offensive. Fine, but Devon's just an athlete like the rest of them. Choose to like him, choose to not like him. It's irrelevant. You all hear his opinions on rule changes because he's got a massive following, and you all watch him to like him or hate him. But it doesn't mean that he gets to change the rules or anything like that. And I think there's even less chance now because this is so in the public eye that he would have even less influence, if you like. I just really wouldn't worry about that. Strongman question. Yeah, do you think the world record deadlift will be broken anytime soon? I have to admit, I was surprised Thor didn't break it. Arnold Strongman Classic is the elephant bar deadlift. It's different. 501 deadlift is in a suit, and yeah, Thor is going to Germany in a few weeks, and I believe he will pull at least 505 there. Nobody should be announcing matches or events but Robert or Dexter. Robert and Dexter should have full control of social media, all online platforms, and there is where matches should be announced. East versus West name, I believe, rather than anyone's individual name. It's my opinion. It keeps it very clear and clarity that way. And that way you can make sure all athletes that are going to be involved in that tournament are involved before the public are on one single East versus West name. Well, Adam is working, I believe, with East versus West. Yeah, Larry and Adam are no longer manager, athlete, and obviously myself and Larry are not in arm wrestling. Not sure. I haven't seen much. I think Larry's bodybuilding. Yeah, Adam, I believe, is helping East versus West the best he can. Okay, we'll just go a little bit more, guys, because I've said my piece and you've all got your opinions. Easton Puller's idea that the judges are in favour of the West is hilarious. Looking at East versus West events, the rest of the majority are biased for the East. It's proven time and time again. I don't know about bias. In my opinion, factually, I've got an opinion and facts. Facts, Engin assigned those referees and those rules. Not Devon Laratt, nobody else, Engin. So how can the Eastern guys have a problem with that? It's pretty apparent that the refereeing standards weren't particularly high and there's clear misunderstandings about rules, but that's because the promoters haven't trained the referees and given them enough time and flown them in long enough before and clear rules written out that they're able to apply them. It's time to work with the referees to help them. You would be a good matchmaker. Maybe you're talking to someone in the comments, because I definitely wouldn't outside of the top guys. I can navigate the very best guys to see how they could progress to the final super match, but below that, I would be terrible. I have zero knowledge compared to so many of these guys in the sport. From the people I know right now, if it was my business, I would be probably starting to look at Neil to matchmake. Someone says Coach Ray. Here's another one. I'm sure could have some good ideas about that. I wouldn't be asking Devon Laratt because whoever he picks to win always loses, right? So I wouldn't be asking him, but I would be working very closely with Devon because he's great for the sport. So everybody has their position. You have to understand that. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Neil's the one I just spoke about, and I totally agree. Why not have a few people that advise? Yeah. Matt Rose is the middleman. Guys, like I say, you have to remember I'm working in arm wrestling now. I'm kind of a middleman in strongman, but nobody has approached me. Nobody's asked me to speak about this. But I just hope for the sport that it'll get back together. So I wanted to give the Eastern guys' point of view and some balance to the thing between Engin and Devon. Would you be open to working with Dexter and Baxter if they asked you? Yeah, at this stage I would. And you can think what you want, but I would be straight down the line. Ray's got 100 times more knowledge than me about arm wrestling. Really has. His Russian is significantly better than mine, but perhaps have more business experience, and I'm more happy to shoot straight down the line, whereas Ray has good relationships with certain people. And so what I'm saying is, between us, we probably have two good skill sets. This is where you've got to have balance and know your place. Engin would destroy me in an arm wrestling match. Well, it's an interesting combination, but this is all hearsay and fantasy. Those two guys are heavily involved in the sport and have been for years and know a lot. I think this is a thing generally that the sport should work to promote athletes. It should be on promoters to help do that. That's where there's big conflict between the way Devon does things and Engin, but in my opinion, Engin should have embraced the way Devon goes about things. If every athlete was like that, it'd be an absolute nightmare, but they're not. But for one to be like that, thank God. Yeah, this is a point I made, isn't it? Muhammad Ali was trolling his opponents very hard, really hard. I'm not sure if people will know quite how hard he went, proper Devon Laratt style. Yeah, he showed up at events. He used to show up outside their house, Sonny Liston. He showed up outside his house with a microphone on a bus with a crowd of people. Yeah, Sonny Liston fired a gun. That was in Las Vegas casino. Yeah. That's what I mean. This isn't a problem. And the other boxers didn't quit. Same in UFC. They didn't quit when Conor was there. Hopefully he does. He loves the sport, but he hates to lose. So matchmaking for him needs to be on point. I don't think that's difficult. He's a high-level guy, but his level, as we saw, was like slightly below where John was at. Okay, I fully support Engin having the right to ban anyone he wants on his own channel, even if I completely disagree with many of his bans. Yeah, I totally agree with that. On his channel, he should. East versus West is a different matter. They should try and remain impartial. Someone's been abusive or whatever, ban them, but Engin on his channel, why not? That's why I said matches should only be announced under the name East versus West on their official sites, never via an individual's name. Jesus, there's so many questions here. You guys must be bored of me by now. Let's just go a couple more minutes, yeah? Let me scroll all the way to where we are now. If someone's put a super chat in, just put the question again. Tell me it was a super chat and I missed it or something. There's one. If East was clear about the rules and communication, do you think the Eastern athletes will return even if Engin is no longer working with them based on their critics' emotional response so far and fear? Yes, I do. From the guys I've spoken to, it's less what people think that it's all about Engin. It's just more about them thinking they have someone that will put their voice forward and someone who will not allow them to turn up to an event and find out the rules have changed. They're willing to listen to rule changes if it goes to a vote between all athletes and it's common consensus that that's a better change to be made. So yeah, I absolutely do. Because I'm really sorry if I missed any super chat here. Let me see. When I tap on your name, it doesn't come up with you can be a mod. It just suggests to ban you or keep you quiet for a while. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how far behind I'm on the chat. Jesus. Kevin, read my super chat, Matt. Please write it out again. Obviously, don't make it a super chat, and I'll read it. Seems like Engen is trying to kill arm wrestling. There's a saying, isn't it, that people kill the thing that they love. Two things: the thing that you love can kill you, or you can kill the thing that you love. Some questions about strongman. I'll cover strongman another day, guys. This is for the arm wrestling community. By the way, I should get Thor on here in the next few days. I don't think it feels my position to speak about that because I've only heard stories. I don't know facts on it, so I don't want to get involved in those guys. Yeah, very difficult sport to referee, I agree, and I think they've made it incredibly difficult for the referees. That's why the referees need support, training, perhaps slightly easier rules that the athletes agree on. I'm sure they can find common ground. I'm sure they can. Just because Devon says a lot publicly and everyone hears his voice, I don't think it would be difficult to find a common consensus on a couple rule changes. Do I think Reynolds winning World Strongest was a one-off? He came fourth at Royal Albert Hall above very good athletes. Finished below him, Mitchell Hooper, Lucas Hatton, people like that below him, and he's the only one, Reno, that's been doing Strongman Champions League in the meantime and had an incredibly busy schedule, and he's in full-time employment. So no, thought he did very well there, and definitely not a one-off. Yeah, you're welcome, mate. You're welcome. Hope it offered something positive for some people. Of the people I know, that's who I suggested. Yeah, do that. Someone there, like said, type super chat in all caps. So if I've missed your super chat, do it now. I'm down to like where we are. I'm up to date, and I'll answer your question if I've missed someone's super chat. A couple of minutes, guys, and I'll run. You must be bored of this by now. If you weren't on it earlier at the very beginning, I went through the legitimate claims of the Eastern athletes. At some point in all of this, Devon Laratt jumped on for a while. Seemed like he's had enough of this now. Let's just get the Eastern athletes connected with the new owners, and I think we're good to go. Poke the bear enough, and that person will eventually come out of hiding. Devon calling people out on his channel is good publicity for that person. Do you realize that? Nobody would know, Camille. Yeah, like I alluded to earlier, some of these guys talk about they don't make that much money, but their main business is coaching and stuff like that. The reason that they've got the amount of clients they have through coaching and all this is in big part due to Devon Laratt growing the sport. So you don't have to like him, but you have to understand how all these elements go together. Trust me, perhaps 30, 40 years on, you see that part of Ali, but some of the stuff he did was pretty rough as well. He's just a character. I didn't like Conor McGregor. I did like Muhammad Ali. I didn't like Conor McGregor, but I got what he was. And just like Dana White, he wouldn't go and have a big problem with him. Conor McGregor pushed Dana White a number of times, in like weigh-ins and that type of thing, and nothing big was made out of it. You knew the character, you knew what you were getting, you knew what it was for. Sometimes you've got to leave egos at the door and understand what that person's bringing, who they are. It's not a big problem. You're very welcome. Guys, just one more time, if you made a super chat and I missed it, put in caps super chat and write it out again, not as a super chat. Don't put any money there, and I'll answer your question for just a couple more minutes. And if somehow that doesn't happen and I miss something, just write to me on Instagram and I'll answer your question personally for you. Yeah, exactly. It was close to the bone a lot of the time. So people don't remember. Muhammad Ali was kind of like a hero for me, a sporting hero. But yeah, can understand why people hated him. Yeah, you absolutely do. As a fan, love him or hate him, fine, it's no problem. As a promoter, embrace the people that are helping the sport grow in terms of finances, in terms of eyes on the sport, in terms of bringing sponsors in, opportunities. As an athlete, you're not going to like Devon if you're facing him. Of course you're not. Who would like all of that? But try to understand that when it's over, if you've beaten him, just like Levin did, afterwards he's going to be okay. You've got to try and understand that. Yeah, I'm talking about boxing now. Lisson took a dive, yeah. Sonny Lisson was controlled by the mafia. And he took a dive, the anchor punch. Yeah, I said I didn't like Conor McGregor. I believe he didn't really turn off, nothing like the way that Devon does, yeah. King of the table was not Engin, myself, Adam, Don, Larry. Engin was East versus West, but East versus West had a separate deal with Core Sports, and Core Sports had a stake in King of the Table, and that's where it got really messy. It did for me. But it's not details I can go into. It's not correct. World's Strongest Man contract is up after next year, I believe. So then that's when, if they're going to do a live stream, there will be an opportunity. I believe it's time, but there's reasons also why, like arm wrestling, they're trying to grow it. And if you sell a TV contract, but you've had a live stream, it devalues the TV contract. It's kind of it's an unhelpful point, let's say, like that. Devon Laratt might voice his opinion on what they should or shouldn't do, but Devon is an athlete. He's not an organization, and I've never heard the East versus West guys, new ownership, tell the guys from the East what they should or shouldn't do. You mustn't confuse these things. Again, guys, I believe the Eastern athletes are ready to come back. They just need someone who's a voice for them. Devon has said numerous times he's ready to continue at East versus West if Engin is there or not there. Okay, guys, I think we'll leave it at that. I think we've summarized it enough here. I just look if I wrote anything down before all this. My solutions, bring in other matchmakers. To my mind, someone like Neil is very knowledgeable, but there could be a number of smart matchmakers. I think for the top guys, top 10 guys, it's very obvious I could have done that matchmaking, but for the rest of the cards and bringing new people in, you need very knowledgeable people to do that. But there's a number of matchmakers out there, and I think the guy that's been the matchmaker so far, I don't think did such a special job. Give the referees support and coaching so that they can actually apply the rules. They don't understand what's going on themselves at the moment. That's where there's problems. I think that the assurances should be given to Eastern athletes, someone as the middleman, a bridge, so that they understand. And when there's talks of rule changes, it should be common consensus by all the athletes. Devon Laratt has told me he agrees with that. I don't see where there's an issue with that. I think that the Eastern athletes should understand that why they have legitimate issues. This isn't the way to go about it. They love the sport. Great. They love the sport. Let's keep it together. So that's the kind of way I see it. But out of all this chaos, guys, I think it can and will come back together as long as East versus West make a few good decisions now, bring in a few key people, and I think it'll be good to go. And I think it'll add a bit more kind of spice to some of these matches coming up. And let's see some matches in the West and the East. Yeah. Okay, guys. I appreciate you watching. Thank you for all the super chats. If I missed them, write to me on Instagram. I'll answer your question personally. Yeah, I hope it was some positive insight with solutions rather than just shit slinging. There's good guys in the East and good guys in the West.